Now, the Eiffel Tower is closed. Only 10% of France's prized high-speed trains are running, and tens of thousands of people are out on the streets protesting against the French government's plans for pension reform. Walkouts are disrupting transport, schools and hospitals nationwide. It's unclear how long it could last, but in Paris, the capital, subway workers will be on strike until Monday. Eurostar and Thalys have cancelled trains linking Paris with London and Brussels. Many flights too have also been scrapped. Well, our reporters on the ground have been following these strikes and protests for us. Let's talk now to David Chazan in Paris and Oliver Whitfield-Miocic in Lyon. David, let's start with you. Of course, we've been hearing about clashes erupting across the capital. What's it like?
Well, they're erupting just behind me, Tokes. You can probably see that the police have sealed off part of the street there. And just on the other side of the Place de la République behind me, clashes have broken out between protesters and police, with people described by the police as troublemakers rather than union members, throwing stones and bottles at the police. And the police have been firing tear gas. So there's been clouds of tear gas smoke rising over the square here, and a number of windows smashed. And the protesters also overturned a lorry trailer and set fire to it. So briefly, there was a big pall of black smoke that rose over the square. So quite dramatic scenes, but the unionists and the strikers are very disappointed because they say that the police have deliberately blocked the march that they intended to go through Republic Square just here and on to Place de la Nation. And so they say that this was a police strategy designed to stop them pursuing the march to its completion, and to make it look as though there were fewer people demonstrating against President Macron's pension reforms than there really are. The police deny that. They say that their only consideration is public safety, and that is why parts of the march have been halted.
Briefly, David, if you can, have you had a chance to speak to any union leaders? And, you know, if you have, did they have a sense that their protest movement has been derailed by these violent disruptions?
Well, I have spoken to some of them and they have expressed regret. They said that they didn't intend any violence to occur today, and they say it's not the strikers or the union members who are responsible for it. They're blaming groups who are known as black blocs. They're anti-capitalist protesters, sometimes described as anarchists, and it's thought that they just came here, as they did at many of the yellow vest protests over the past few months. They've come deliberately seeking to start violence and start clashes with the police. So I think the union leaders are very disappointed both with the violent troublemakers and with the police who've stopped the march.
David Chazan there in Paris. Well, do take care of yourself there. Oliver, let me cross over to you. Of course, the city of Lyon is preparing for its world-famous Fête de Lumière, that light festival which takes place every year. Is this protest threatening to disrupt the party?
Well, that's certainly what the police are hoping will not happen. What they've done is they've installed police ride vans, as you can see behind me, on most of the major bridges heading into Lyon, where this light festival is going to take place. The problem that they've got, though, is that the protesters, especially those anarchists who are trying to infiltrate these protests, are highly mobile. They can move around in groups of 10 and 20. The police will then have to play a game of cat and mouse, and so here they're trying their very best to stop, to filter, to make sure that those people do not get in. Now, we've had a similar echo of what David was saying in Paris, here in Lyon too. The protesters, the unions, saying that the police had stopped them from going to the places that they really wanted to go to. They wanted to gather in the central square here in Lyon, but because of these roadblocks, they weren't allowed. And also, they were chased away from the final endpoint that they were then redirected to by the police after they were tear gassed. So there is big mistrust here of the police, of the state, of President Macron. This is all about the pensions reforms, but it's a lot deeper than that. People here are saying that According to the latest polls, at least 76% of people want the pension system to be reformed, but then around 2/3 of people don't believe that the Macron government is capable of doing that. And it's around a similar level of support for these protests which are taking place. Protests now which the unions are threatening could rumble on, some saying as long as Christmas.
Disruption showing so no sign of unrest there. Oliver Woodfield-Miocic in Lyon and David Chazan in Paris, thank you. Well, there have been similar scenes in many cities across France now. Let's take a look at that with Matthew in the Cube. Matthew.
Well, as you were saying, Tokes, those images we saw of tear gas and rubber bullets in the likes of Paris and Lyon, well, that was echoed across France. Have a look at this picture tweeted by the police in Nantes. You can see there they had to force back some demonstrators who had set fire to bins outside one of the police stations. They also used tear gas there to try and quell protesters who had been throwing projectiles at them. We know that as of 3:30 in the centre of and the capital of France, Paris, that approximately 71 people had already been arrested. But these are the stories that you are going to be seeing across news cameras in the big cities. And as we've been saying, these protests are taking place across France. Now, this is where you can see the amount of social media activity on Snapchat. And while this isn't as pronounced as it was earlier, you can still see the difference between France and the other European countries. There's certainly plenty going on here. And it's not just in those cities we were mentioning earlier. If we zoom in, for example, on the city of Bordeaux, here you go again. You see similar scenes with people out on the streets making their voices heard with banners saying, "Hands off my pension." Let's take you to a different city. And we had some testament from somebody from Monceau-de-Mines. That's a small town just here north of Lyon. These photos sent to us by Pierre Gael. And a number of people there had telling us their messages of why they were taking to the streets and protesting. It wasn't necessarily about violence. For them, it was more about things about the fact that they don't earn enough living and they want a discounted retirement. Just some of the messages that we've been seeing from some of the many protesters taking the streets across France.